Hey everybody, I'm Jack with Future Pastimes. I'm a designer on Dune-themed games and expansions, and we are reading Dune. And we're at a chapter here in the Cave of Birds siege with the Fremen, and two major things happen in this chapter. The first is that it starts off with Jessica. She has a messenger cylinder, and she's heading into the big cave area where there are a lot of Fremen gathered, and she can sense a lot of tension and anxiety and furtiveness and whatnot. It reminds her of when Paul killed Jamis, and she knows what it's all about, and so does Paul. Paul enters in, and he sees Stilgar, and he can hear the Fremen are muttering, and somebody calls out, when are you going to challenge Stilgar? Call him out. People will think you're a coward. And Paul is like, who dares call me a coward? He's got his hand on his knife, and nobody wants to go that far, but others are beginning to shout out, you must do it, it's the way. And so in this chapter, Paul has to win the Fremen over and make them see that him calling out Stilgar and killing him does not serve the tribe's best interests. And he explains to them that the message cylinder that Jessica has is one that is intended for Rabban, and the message is that no help for him is coming from House Harkonnen, and his spice quotas are woefully low, and he needs to step up and work with what he's got. Meaning he's cut off, and the time is right for the Fremen to strike. And that's what Paul is trying to get them to understand. And he's like, look, it's, right before battle, we need our strongest men, and Stilgar is one of our strongest, but he cannot survive a challenge from me. Nobody can, and you all know this, and I'm not boasting. I'm just letting you know that I know this as well. I've been trained since I was younger than you began training your own young warriors. And I've been trained by some of the best teachers in the Imperium. And I'm just, I'm pretty much a badass is what he's saying, but he's like, but I'm not bragging about it. It's just the truth. And ways need to change. And he tries to finish it off by explaining that he is not the leader of this tribe. He is the ruler of Arrakis. He takes out his father's ring, and he explains that his father was the Duke of Arrakis, and now it falls to Paul. And he's using a very kind of low vibe version of the voice, which Jessica can tell he's using the voice, but they are accustomed to not being susceptible to something like that. But it's a different sort of tactic that he's employing. And it's just kind of, the great speaking ability of a strong leader is really kind of what's going on. And he goes through this whole thing where he has Stilgar kneel down and swear allegiance to the Duke of Arrakis. And he lets them know that they are poised to make their strike and transform the planet and get rid of the Harkonnens for good. And ultimately, he's successful. Everyone realizes this is the good way to go. It makes sense. Stilgar doesn't lose face. The hot-headed young Fremen are satisfied because Paul has explained, they've got to stop killing their best warriors and turning that attention, who to kill, towards their enemies. It's the Harkonnen and their blood that deserves to be on the crysknives of the Fremen, not Fremen blood. And so Stilgar is like, all right, great. And Paul's like, Stilgar, go get, send for the other knives. We're going to have a council meeting, and we're going to have a battle plan. And I'm going to explain how we're going to rid Arrakis of the Harkonnens for good. And so he and Jessica go back to Jessica's quarters, and he's like, wait here, I'll be right back. And so she's sitting there thinking, and she's kind of taking in the scene, and she's pleased with Paul, and she notices she can smell the coffee service, and as she's sitting there thinking, she's thinking about Chani, and who she refers to as Paul's desert woman. And she's thinking, yeah, what good is Chani ultimately going to be other than someone who can serve coffee to Paul? He has duties. He is the Duke. He needs to be thinking about a marriage with a great house, maybe even with one of the royal princesses. And as she's mulling about this, suddenly Gurney comes rushing in and takes her totally by surprise. He's grabbed her. He's behind her with a knife in her back, and he's letting her know that her time is up. He's finally caught the traitor, and Paul comes in and sees the scene, and he's confused as well. He's like, what am I looking at? And Gurney's like, don't make another step. I'm going to have her confess to being a traitor. And so Jessica and Paul totally taken by surprise by this whole thing. And Paul has to try to explain to Gurney that Jessica was not the traitor and that it was Dr. Huey. And Gurney doesn't want to believe it because he has spent the last couple of years tracking down any information that would satisfy his suspicions about who the traitor was, and everything was pointing to Jessica. But Paul is like, I've got Huey's own confession. It's not here, but you need to take my word for it. And slowly but surely, he gets Gurney to realize that he's made a terrible mistake. And Gurney lets Jessica go, and they're all quite emotional. And Gurney insists that they kill him for what he has done, but both Paul and Jessica let Gurney know that he is a trusted and valued member of House Atreides, and that they shouldn't have to kill the ones that they love. And Paul chastises him, like, why does everybody want me to kill my best and strongest warriors? This is not the way it's supposed to be. And so Gurney is pretty humiliated, but they let him know how much he means to them. And Paul suggests that he go get his balisette and play something for Jessica. And he says he'll be back, and he leaves, and there's a messenger saying that there are some Knives who have already come, but they'd actually come to deal with Paul calling out Stilgar. But Paul's like, yeah, just let them gather. When the rest of them come, we're going to have our battle meeting. Paul goes off, and he realizes that he's been having these prescient visions, all the different pathways of the future, but in none of them did he ever see Gurney about to kill his own mother. And he realizes that his tolerance for the spice is affecting his prescience. He's not having as accurate or as many visions, and he knows what he has to do. Somewhere nearby, they have what they call a little maker, and it's a worm that has been stunted in its growth by where it's kept. It's surrounded by water, which is poison to Shai-Hulud. And the reason for that is they keep these small worms so that they can drown them, and that process produces the water of life, which is the poisonous water that Lady Jessica had to drink and then convert into a non-poisonous form. And that is how she became a Reverend Mother. And Paul knows that that is the process he needs to go through to become the Kwisatz Haderach. And he's decided that that is what he has to do. He needs to find out once and for all if he is the Kwisatz Haderach, because then it will presumably unlock his prescience and really give him full authority over the abilities of the Kwisatz Haderach. So two really important things that happen in this chapter, and it's the first part, it goes really well. Paul is able to accomplish the task of not having to murder Stilgar. He can keep his friend and mentor alive and leverage him for the battle that will be coming with the Harkonnens. And but then everything goes topsy-turvy for Paul when he doesn't realize that Gurney was about to murder his own mother. So, Paul's mother, that is. So, yeah, really important chapter. Really tense and also emotional. The hatred that Gurney has, and then his shame, and just wanting to be dead after what he's done, but them realizing just how important Gurney is, and that they need him, and they they don't want to punish him for what was just a misunderstanding among friends. In terms of adaptation, the Lynch movie, they eschewed this entire sequence. There was never any doubt about who the traitor was, and Gurney didn't have any questions. They didn't really pull that thread at all. The miniseries, they definitely did this whole chapter, the Duke of Arrakis for Paul, and then Gurney almost murdering Lady Jessica. I thought it was really well adapted, so I'm looking forward to how the Villeneuve movie treats it. I am praying that they include, we know from the trailer that Paul's speech to the gathered Fremen and insisting he's the Duke of Arrakis, that's in the trailer, so we know that that part is in there, but we don't know if they're going to have the whole segment where the word on the street is that Lady Jessica was the traitor, and Gurney is finally able to get his revenge. I truly hope that they keep that in there, and we get to have that scene. I think it will pack a big emotional punch, and will really elevate the whole storyline. I think it needs it. I think this is a critical, important chapter, and I'm hoping that we get to see it. We'll find out when we finally see part 2. I'll definitely do one, if not several, videos with analysis and revisit chapters. How were they adapted? What was added? What was removed? And what do we think of the end product? So let me know your thoughts. If you have any questions about what happened in this chapter, it's mostly straightforward. I loved that at the end of the chapter, Lady Jessica realizes, oh, you know what, Paul, I have been manipulating you this whole time, which is true. And she's been aware of this, but she has realized that this whole emotional thing, and he tells Paul, marry Chani if that's what you want, do what you want, choose a path of happiness. Paul, though, is a little bit beyond that. He's not interested in the path of happiness. In the back of his mind, he's like, how do I get my revenge? How do I lead the Fremen to victory, and how do I avoid the jihad? Those are the 3 things, and it may not be possible to have all 3 of those. And his own happiness is not even on that list. He would be happy if he could lead the Fremen to victory and remove the Harkonnens from the playing field, and have a life with Chani and with his son, and not have a jihad. But at this point, he can't see that future yet. So that's one of the reasons why he's going to go take the water of life, even though every man who's ever tried it in the past has died from that process. And so it's a risky proposition, but he feels like he has no choice, and that's the thing. So it's a great chapter. Like I said, I really hope that it does get adapted with as much of that detail as possible. I'll be curious also to see how the relationship with Chani and Lady Jessica plays out. They're making Chani a much more involved and assertive and sassy character than she is in the book, by all accounts, from what we've seen in the trailers. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. I think it's a good move, but I do want this conflict in the daughter, mother, sort of daughter-in-law element between them. Hopefully that will get portrayed, because this was the turning point. It was this, and realizing that they've given up so much as Atreides, and Paul deserves to be happy, and Jessica realizes that finally, when faced with her own death, and just what all of this has done to Gurney. So yeah, there's a lot. It packs a lot of emotional content into this chapter. Herbert does a great job bringing this out and getting to the heart of the matter. So, like I said, let me know your thoughts on this chapter as you're reading along, and we will continue reading. We are getting close to the conclusion. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.